Yeah, good evening, everyone. I, Dr. Jyoti Jain, on behalf of Regional Anesthesia Forum Jaipur, welcome you all to the webinar on Art of Extubation. This is the third webinar related to airway management organized by Regional Anesthesia Forum Jaipur. We welcome you all to this interactive session. I would like to introduce Dr. Swami sir, who will be a moderator for this session. He is a mentor and our favorite teacher. Swami sir needs no introduction. He did his MD in 1987 from prestigious SMS Medical College, Jaipur. He did his SRship from AIIMS, Delhi. He has served formerly as Director and Head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Critical Care at Fortis Hospital, Mohali. Currently, he is working as Consultant Anesthesiologist at SDMH, Jaipur. I now hand over the session to Swami sir.
Good evening, everybody. This is Adesh Swami from Santoba Dolapati Memorial Hospital. Our department headed by Dr. Made a presentation for this. She neglected. She talked a lot about intubation and maintaining the patient, but we rarely talk about extubation, and it's really great that we got an opportunity to talk about it. Thank you, Parashar sir. If we can have the slide of our Reverend Dr. Patwa.
Adarsh boss, your residents can start presenting now. They can start presenting their presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Today's topic for discussion is Art of Extubation under the guidance of Dr. A.C. Swami from Department of Anesthesiology, SDMH. This is our SDMH campus. This is the faculty training us at the SDMH campus, and this is our fellow colleagues who are currently being trained in SDMH campus. Introduction. Extubation has an important role in optimal patient recovery in the perioperative period. Tracheal extubation has received relatively limited scrutiny compared with that to intubation. Complications after extubation are 3 times more common than that occurring after tracheal intubation. Definitions. Extubation. It is the purposeful removal of the tracheal tube and transitions from an established airway to normal airway. Extubation failure is the inability of the patient to maintain a patent airway with effective spontaneous ventilation after purposeful removal of the previously placed endotracheal tube. So what are the criteria for extubation? The patient has to be awake, alert, able to follow commands, maintaining stable hemodynamic parameters like BP, heart rate, temperature, saturation, a respiratory rate of less than 30 breaths per minute. There should be presence of gag, swallow, and cough reflex with adequate reversal of neuromuscular blockade with Traynor-4 ratio 4/4 or sustained tetany at 50 Hz. There should be a strong hand grip or a sustained head lift for more than 5 seconds. In cases of difficult airway, extended criteria is inclusive of the arterial blood gases reasonable with an FiO2 at 40% with pH being more than 7.3, PaO2 of more than 60 millimeters of mercury, and PaCO2 less than 50 millimeters of mercury. The patient should also be achieving adequate respiratory mechanics such as a tidal volume of more than 5 ml per kg, a vital capacity of more than 15 ml per kg, and generating a negative inspiratory force of more than -20 centimeters of water. Cough leak test should be done for those who are at risk of laryngeal edema. So how do you prepare a patient for extubation? The initial plan should be consisting of how to extubate the patient, that is, either awake, deep, or a deep replacement of the tracheal tube with the laryngeal mask airway. Other preparation, such as planning for the patient position, keeping a bite block in place, throat pack removal, adequate pre-oxygenation, and aspiration of secretions from the pharynx should be done, and also from the trachea if indicated. Tracheal extubation, awake or anesthetized. When deciding when to extubate, two main considerations should be taken care of. Firstly, was there any previous difficulty in controlling the airway? And second, what is the risk of pulmonary aspiration and upper airway obstruction? As a general rule, patients should be extubated awake. Children show a greater incidence of upper airway complications with awake extubation as a result of increased airway reactivity. Extubation under deep anesthesia decreases cardiovascular stimulation, reduces the incidence of coughing and straining on the tube, and also incidence of post-operative respiratory complications. Patient positioning. Extubating in the left lateral head-down position has been a traditional practice. This maintains the airway patency by protruding the tongue away from the posterior pharyngeal wall and also protects the airway from aspiration. Laryngoscopy and re-intubation may be favorable in this position for experienced anesthetists. Following upper airway surgery, supine semi-upright position also facilitates spontaneous respiration and diaphragmatic expansion. This aids an effective cough reflex, increases functional residual capacity, and encourages lymphatic drainage and reduction of airway edema. In the presence of obstructive sleep apnea, semi-upright, lateral, or any non-supine position for extubation and recovery can be considered. When should we extubate the patients? The mean threshold for glottic closure is increased during inspiration. Therefore, it is usually carried out at end inspiration when glottis is fully open to prevent trauma and laryngospasm. Administration of 100% oxygen, ventilation to aid washout of inhalational agents, and positive pressure breath at extubation to prevent atelectasis are routine maneuvers before extubation. What are the problems associated with extubation? Mechanical causes of difficult extubation. The possible causes of inability to remove the tracheal tube are failure to deflate the cuff caused by a damaged pilot tube, trauma to the larynx, cuff herniation, adhesion to the tracheal wall, surgical fixation of the tube to adjacent structures. This can be managed by puncturing the cuff transtracheally or using a needle inserted into the stump of the pilot tube. The tube can be rotated or a slight traction can be given, and to aid diagnosis, fiber optic scope can be used. If sutures are tethered, they can be surgically removed. Cardiovascular response. Tracheal extubation is associated with 10 to 30% increase in arterial blood pressure and heart rate, which can last for 5 to 15 minutes. Patients with coronary artery disease experience a 40 to 50% decrease in ejection fraction. This is undesirable in patients following cardiac and neurosurgery. Response may be attenuated by pharmacological interventions, including giving IV esmolol at 1.5 mg per kg 2 to 5 minutes before extubation. Magnesium, remifentanil or enfentanil infusion, dexmedetomidine at 0.75 mcg per kg can be administered 15 minutes before extubation. IV lignocaine can be given 1 mg per kg over 2 minutes. Topical 10% lidocaine can be considered. Perioperative oral nimodipine with labetalol can also be given. Replacing the endotracheal tube with a supraglottic airway device has also been recommended. This acts as a bridging device, and therefore it is to be avoided in patients considered to be full stomach, such as obesity, pregnancy, patients with raised intra-abdominal, intraocular, and intracranial pressures. This avoids reflex response due to tracheal tube intolerance. So what are the respiratory complications? Coughing and sore throat, early post-operative hypoxemia, inadequate minute ventilation, airway obstruction, increased ventilation perfusion mismatch, diffusion hypoxia, post-hyperventilation on hyperventilation, shivering, inhibition of hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction, mucociliary dysfunction. Filling the tracheal tube cuff with liquid avoids overinflation as a result of increase in temperature or nitrous oxide diffusion. 2% lidocaine with soda bicarbonate 1.4 or 8.4% has an excellent diffusion profile across the PVC cuff. That is, 45 to 65% occurs in 6 hours. This is safe and less irritant in case of cuff rupture, especially if 1.4% soda bicarbonate is used, as it is in a more of a physiological pH. This reduces incidence of coughing, bucking, restlessness, and hoarseness during emergence without suppressing the swallowing reflex, and also the incidence of sore throat in the 24-hour post-operative period is also reduced. Airway obstruction. A differential diagnosis of post-extubation upper airway obstruction include laryngeal edema, laryngospasm, hemorrhage, trauma, vocal cord paralysis, and dysfunction. Laryngospasm. It is a common cause of post-extubation airway obstruction, particularly in children. Vagal, trigeminal, auditory, phrenic, sciatic, and splanchnic nerve stimulation, vocal cord irritation from blood, vomitous, or oral secretion, cervical flexion or extension with an indwelling endotracheal tube are variety of triggers that has been recognized. When there occurs a laryngospasm, always think of airway irritation or obstruction, the presence of blood secretion, or a light pen of anesthesia and regurgitation. And this is to be managed with 100% oxygen, visualization and clearing of secretions, adequate jaw thrust, mask ventilation with the application of CPAP, deepening the clinic anesthesia with propofol, or 5.5 mg per kg succinylcholine can be given if not controlled with propofol. And if the above measures fail, intubate and continue to ventilate the patients. Laryngeal and tracheal injuries. Airway injuries may occur from the lips to the distal trachea. For example, lacerations, edema, arytenoid dislocation, and vocal fold paralysis. The lip or the tongue may become entrapped between the laryngoscope blade and the mandibular teeth, resulting in swelling or bleeding. Palatopharyngeal injuries have been described as a consequence of blind insertion of the endotracheal tube during video laryngoscopy. Post-obstructive pulmonary edema. The incidence of post-obstructive pulmonary edema is 1 in every 1,000 anesthetics. The most patients are children or young fit adults. The common pattern is an episode of airway obstruction at emergence followed by rapid onset of distress, hemoptysis, and bilateral radiological changes consistent with pulmonary edema. Both clinical and radiological features usually resolve within 24 hours with no sequelae, although delayed presentation of up to 24 hours and progression to acute lung injury and death have also been reported. This is an X-ray on the left-hand side showing bilateral alveolar infiltrates consistent with the diagnosis of pulmonary edema. And on the right, we have the resolution of the infiltrates after 12 hours of the event. Extubation in difficult airway. One would expect to encounter difficult extubation in whom the presence of difficult intubation was marked. These patients may be conventionally marked as difficult mask ventilation, difficult intubation, re-intubation, difficult recovery, difficult or compromised airway due to pre-existing diseases such as obesity, OSA, rheumatoid arthritis, hyperventilation disorders, and neurovascular diseases. Pre-oxygenation with 100% oxygen via the endotracheal tube improves the oxygen reserve and provides a safe apnea duration in case of airway obstruction or compromise immediately post-extubation. Extubation is done using a fiber optic bronchoscope or an airway exchange catheter. The optimal time for airway exchange catheter removal is to be individualized. The Difficult Airway Society of UK recommends 2 hours for retaining the exchange catheter, but the device may be kept for extended period of 2 days. If airway patency is absent or doubtful, then the tracheal tube should be reinserted, the patient should be reassessed, and plans for extubation should be reformulated. Extubation in difficult airway due to surgical cause, airway edema, or airway collapse. Normal airway or difficult airway before the surgical intervention may become difficult or increasingly complex after the surgical procedure. Certain surgical procedures may lead to nerve damage supplying the airway, jeopardizing airway patency, leading to post-extubation obstruction. Surgical handling, airway manipulation, hematoma, massive fluid infusion, decreased venous drainage, angioedema, preeclampsia may lead to supraglottic airway edema. Surgeries like anterior cervical spine interventions, thyroidectomy, carotid end arterectomy, and maxillofacial surgeries may lead to airway difficulties at extubation. The cuff leak test. This is of moderate accuracy to be performed before extubation. It is done in order to assess airway edema and collapsibility. This measures the difference in the exhaled tidal volume with the cuff inflated and deflated, and it is to be done while the patient is being mechanically ventilated on a volume control mode. The difference between the inflated and the deflated exhaled tidal volume is considered significant if it is less than 10 to 25% or 110 to 130 ml. If the leak is present, the trachea is extubated over the exchange catheter or the fiber optic bronchoscope. And if the leak is absent or equivocal, extubation is delayed. Steroids are known to reduce inflammatory airway edema and preventing extubation failure. IV steroid supplementation, NEP with adrenaline, and head-up position can be done. Post-extubation care. After extubation, the patient needs to be given supplemental oxygen and monitored for any airway compromise in a controlled and a monitored environment such as an ICU or any high dependency unit. Appropriate suctioning, heads-up position, and bronchodilators should be continued as per patient's requirement. Documentation to be done promptly to aid future planning of airway management. This is an algorithm that was published in the IDA Society of 2016, the management of anticipated difficult extubation. That is, in the presence of normal airway, either awake extubation or deep extubation can be considered, but both of them are followed by oxygen supplementation. In the presence of difficult mass ventilation, difficult intubation, re-intubation, delayed recovery, difficulty because of pre-existing diseases, the difficult airway cart is to be kept ready. Once the patient is fully awake or obeying commands, recruitment of the lung is done if not contraindicated. Oxygen supplementation to the endotracheal tube during extubation, and the patient is extubated over the AEC or the fiber optic bronchoscope. After the exchange catheter and the fiber optic bronchoscope removal, oxygen supplementation is continued, and CPAP or an HFNC can be considered for oxygen supplementation. In the presence of surgical cause for airway compromise, suspected airway edema, suspected airway collapse, the difficult cart is also kept ready here for during extubation. A leak test is done on ventilator. If the leak is present, then you can extubate over the AEC or the fiber optic bronchoscope either in the OT, ICU, or a high dependency unit. And if the leak is absent or extubated, delay extubation, that is post-operative ventilation or breathing spontaneously, and consider steroids. In a suspected airway collapse, attempt to extubate under deep inhalation anesthesia with patient breathing spontaneously over the AEC or the fiber optic bronchoscope is done in the OT. If the airway obstruction persists, re-intubate and consider tracheostomy. Post-procedure plan is treat the airway edema if suspected, monitor for any complication, and counsel and documentation has to be done. In conclusion, systemic approach complemented with a good clinical judgment as discussed could result in an uneventful extubation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jana.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good presentation.
Thank you.
But we'll discuss same thing in a different way.
Okay, sir.
Right? What do you mean by extubation failure?
So when the patient is not able to protect his own airways, after we have attempted a extubation operation, that then I would say as an extubation failure.
Have you read the guideline?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So, how HFNC? You mentioned about the HFNC
Yes,
after
sir.
extubation. How it helps? Hypronasal oxygen. How it helps during after extubation?
So HFNC actually the oxygen, the amount of oxygen builds in your O2 reservoirs along your nasal sinuses, and it pushes the dead space carbon dioxide that is present downwards, and there is no rebreathing present as such. So, and then a small amount of PEEP is also present in HFNC that helps in maintaining the alveoli patent. So that further enhances
What's the capability of flowing the flow with the HFNC?
60 liters per minute maximum.
Up to 60 to 70, up to 70 liter per minute. See what happens with high flow of oxygen. We are able to match the 100% FiO2. That is important thing. Post extubation. That is one thing. Second, when you are delivering high flow of oxygen through nasal cannula, it decreases the work of breathing. That is the second advantage. Fine. It's a humidified gas. And third, with the closed mouth, if you are delivering 50 to 60 liter of flow through the nose, it can generate this continuous positive airway pressure up to 7 centimeter of S2. So which keep the alveoli open, which prevents the atelectasis in a post-operative period. So these are the advantage of using HFNC in a post-op period compared to simple nasal plunge or oxygen mask. Okay.
So,
Fine.
Dr. Adarsh will now introduce Dr. Patwa.
May I have the slide, please? Would someone share the slide?
No, first the questions, sir.
Okay, first question then. So first question is, airway exchange catheter and ventilating bougie can be used interchangeably? Yes or no?
Outside cannot be used.
Next question, please.
Next question, please. Leak test should be done in every patient with predicted difficult extubation? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Dr. Swami, you can move on now.
Yeah. So can I have the Dr. Patwa's antecedent slide, please? Would like to introduce Dr. Patwa, sir. So would you please provide the slide for that? Yeah. So Dr. Apeksh Patwa, he is the big boss of Vadodara as far as anesthesia is concerned. He is Chief Consultant Anesthesiologist, KCHRC, Kailash Cancer Hospital and Research Center, Muni Ashram, Goraj, Vadodara Institute of Neurological Sciences, Vadodara, Vadodara Laparoscopic Center, Bariatric Surgery Center, Vadodara. He is author of AIDA consensus guideline for airway management in OR during COVID-19 pandemic 2019. Co-author IDA Difficult Airway Guidelines 2016. Winner ISA Academic Excellence Award 2017. Course Director IDA Fellowship for Advanced and Difficult Airway Management. Faculty more than 150 state, regional, national, international conferences. Designed and developed Patwa Shah I video laryngoscope, HU Flow 2 HFNO device, has 3 national awards, 12 publications, and 5 chapters in books. Over to Dr. Apeksha Patwa.
Thank you, sir, for your kind introduction. I'm highly obliged and thankful to the team, Regional Anesthesia Forum, Dr. Vanda Magal, Dr. Parasar, Dr. Swami, Dr. Atul Purohit. I'm feeling like I'm in Jaipur now. And thank you for providing me the platform to teach the PGs. So my today's talk on extubation. So most of the thing has been covered by the PG student, but I'll same thing I'm going to present in a different way. So extubation is very important clinical process. We need to have an art to remove the tube. We need to learn art of extubation. So before we are learning the art of extubation, we need to define the extubation. What is extubation? So it's a purposeful removal of tracheal tube, or we can say it's a transition from an established airway to a natural airway. So it's not a simple thing. It has been affected by a number of factors at the time of recovery, like recovery of reflexes, altered anatomy at the time of recovery because of surgical intervention. We can say it as anatomical compromise, physiological rearrangement at the time of recovery, and certain human factor we need to consider when we extubate the patient. We want to have a success of extubation, then we need to look at these factors. So we start with the exaggerated layer. Most of the patient we encountered with the exaggerated laryngeal reflexes during the time of recovery, like breath holding, coughing, bucking, which increases the intracranial pressure, which increases the intraocular pressure, leads to hemodynamic fluctuations. We need to control these things at the time of recovery. And there are a number of ways we can do it. We can extubate in a deeper plane of anesthesia, or by using the opioid or remifentanil technique, or by giving lidocaine. So we need to control these factors, exaggerated laryngeal reflex. And over and above that, many patients represent with the laryngospasm at the time of recovery, at the time of extubation. It's a glotic protective reflexes. And the presence of blood, surgical debris or secretions are the precipitating factor. So before planning your extubation, always do thorough oropharyngeal suctioning, which prevents the laryngospasm to happen. Remove the surgical debris, remove the secretions, remove the bloods if it is there in the oropharynx. And the sequelae of laryngospasm, if left untreated, can lead to negative pulmonary pressure edema. So this needs to take into consideration and has to be treated, has to be controlled before extubation. And many patients represent with the reduced airway reflexes at the time of recovery. If specifically we are extubating in the deeper plane, there are chances of airway collapse and obstructions and lead to hypoxemia and increase the chances of aspiration and airway swelling. And at the time of recovery, there is significantly reduced functional residual capacity because of hypoventilation or diffusional hypoxia, and there is a ventilation perfusion mismatch, and most of the patient at the time of recovery present with the atelectasis, if lung has been not recruited. So we need to recruit the lung when we plan the extubation. That we'll discuss later at the end of this session, how to recruit the lung at the time of recovery. So certain human factors also complicate the extubation process, like time pressure. See, in high volume center, they are in hurry to take the next case, and we left the patient unattended after extubation, which may complicate the extubation process. And those who are specifically in the doing the freelancing practice, they are in hurry to attend the next case somewhere else, and they just leave the patient as it is, and this complicate the extubation. And in most of the OR, the difficult airway gadget has been kept in the locker at the time of recovery, which is not available when need arises to re-intubate that patient. So always keep equipment ready at the time of extubation. And same time, see, most of the OT staff will be out of the OT when you plan the extubation. And again, this part also complicate the extubation process. And before extubation, before intubation, you should find out the language of the patient and always try to communicate with his or her vernacular language. Otherwise, communication gap creates the problem at the time of recovery. So all these factors we need to control. So if you are lucky, then and then you are able to do a smooth landing. You are able to do a smooth extubation. But most of the time, you will not be lucky because you need to control number of factors. In such time, you need to do a different type of technique to land a plane. You need to deploy a different technique of extubation. So what should be the purpose? What should be the aim of extubation? It should be safe, it should be smooth, and patient should be stable throughout the procedure. And to achieve this goal, we need to learn an art of extubation. And there are certain steps to learn the art of extubation. You should be able to predict the difficult extubation. Once you predict the difficult extubation, then you need to plan the extubation. Once you plan the extubation, you need to prepare for extubation, and then you need to perform. And then after, take post-extubation care. And most important thing, extubation is not an emergency. It's not an emergency procedure. If you feel it's not possible to extubate the patient, do not extubate. So that decision you have to make at the time of recovery. Don't compromise on the patient's safety. If you feel this patient is, I'm not able to extubate this patient, do not try. It's purely an elective procedure. So how to predict the difficult extubation? So before going to details of prediction, so most of us being an anesthesiologist are predicting the difficult airway, difficult mass treatment, difficult intubation. But we are not thinking of predicting difficult extubation. हो जाएगा. Actually में नहीं होता है. So how to predict the difficult extubation? For that we need to learn a certain definition. Extubation failure is an inability to tolerate the removal of translaryngeal tube. And difficult extubation is a condition in which it is difficult to ensure airway integrity and oxygenation after extubation. That is called difficult extubation. So you need to predict in which cases you will not be able to ensure the oxygenation and you will not be able to ensure the airway integrity. So that has been described by All India Difficult Airway Association in 2016. And they have given very interesting algorithm, and they have made very clear, if you find a patient with 4Ds or 3S, consider this patient as a predicted difficult extubation. 4Ds means difficult mass ventilation, difficult intubation and reintubation, delayed recovery, difficulty due to the pre-existing disease, and 3S is surgical cause of airway compromise. We'll discuss that what is surgical cause of airway compromise. Suspected airway edema and suspected airway collapse. we start with the first 3 S. The first S is a surgical cause of airway compromise. When you encounter this surgical cause of airway compromise, consider that extubation as difficult extubation. And in that, see, mainly because of surgery, there will be a complication after surgery or during surgery related to airway, like thyroid surgery, vocal cord palsy, surgical hematoma, tracheomalacia. This makes the extubation complicated. And you should consider this type of patient as a predicted difficult extubation. Or, see, initially airway was normal, but after surgery, it's become complicated, it's become difficult, like C-spine surgery with the plate fixation, or carotid surgery with hematoma, or head and neck surgery with anatomical compromise at the time of recovery. So consider this type of patient as predicted difficult extubation. Now another group of or set of patients, because of requirement of surgery, there will be a restricted access to the airway after surgery, like dental wiring. It's a surgical requirement for fixation of mandible. And they are not able to access the airway in a post-op patient, which makes the extubation difficult. Or again, C-spine surgery with the implant, or head and neck surgery with the flaps, with the position of the patient in a flexion of cervical spine, or cervical collar at the time of recovery. This makes extubation difficult. And when you encounter such type of cases, always consider this as a difficult extubation. So coming to the another 2 S's, suspected airway edema and suspected airway collapse. So certain changes happens in the airway mainly because of anesthesia and surgery, like multiple attempts of intubation at the time of intubation leads to airway trauma and airway edema, and which can make the extubation difficult. Or improper selection of the size of the endotracheal tube, or overinflation of the cuff of the endotracheal tube, or inflation of the cuff over the vocal cord. This again leads to airway edema and complicate the extubation. Multiple attempts of the passing the endotracheal rise tube or gastric tube can also lead to airway trauma and leads to complicate the extubation. And prolonged head-low position and fluid overload increases the airway edema, and this condition also makes the extubation complicated and difficult. So coming to the D's, 4 D's, what are 4 D's? Difficult mass ventilation, difficult intubation, difficult reintubation. So when you are conducting emergency surgery, airway surgery, head and neck surgery, and when surgical duration is more than 3 hours, always consider this patient as these are the risk factor for reintubation. There are higher chances of reintubation if you are taking care of emergency surgeries, airway surgeries, head and neck surgeries, and when duration of the surgery is lasting more than 3 hours. Coming to the third D, that is difficulty due to pre-existing disease, like obesity and OS patient with obstructive sleep apnea. They are likely to recover with the apneic spell, and which can complicate the extubation process. You need to take a due precautions to prevent apneic spell. Same way, preeclampsia, patient with preeclampsia and eclampsia may present with the airway edema at the time of recovery. And in COPD, because of production of excessive secretion, complicate the extubation process. And even in a COVID era, if you are extubating the patient with the COVID box, it creates the difficulty during the extubation. So consider all these type of patients when you're conducting the extubation, consider the patient as a predicted difficult extubation. So second step you need to do is you need to plan. You need to plan the extubation. And for planning extubation, you need to ask a few questions to yourself. First, can I do it? So answer to this question is depend on your expertise, your skill, and your confidence. So if you get the positive answer of this question, can I do it? Then you need to ask another question to yourself. Should I do it? Means, and answer to these questions depend on optimization of patient physiological conditions. So is my patient hemodynamically stable? Then, and if you get the answer in yes, then come to the next step. When should I do it? So is it the right time to extubate the patient, or should I wait, or should I give more time to optimize the patient physiological condition to make an attempt of extubation? So if you get the answer of all these, the fourth question you should ask, how should I do it? And there are a number of techniques of extubating a patient. The standard method is to control the hemodynamic, the pharmacological extubation, and when patient is fully awake, just extubate the patient. That is the standard method. But in 2004, this is a very interesting publication. They have defined the direction of extubation. Like this is the direction of extubation: 120, 90, 60, 45 degree, 30 degree. So you should extubate the patient at this direction, 60 degree, because there will be, if you are extubating a patient as per the curvature of the endotracheal tube, curvature of the oropharynx, that is 60 degree, then there will be minimum changes, minimum fluctuation in the hemodynamic, and there are minimum airway trauma at the time of extubation. So always extubate a patient at 60 degree angle to this plane, this direction, or you can follow the curvature of endotracheal tube like this. So how should I do it? There are a number of literature discuss the various technique of extubating a patient. I'll just showing the video, then we'll decide in which case which technique to be employed. So this is one of the technique. Here, tube is removed.
The poll results are ready.
Yes.
You can ask for the answers whenever you wish.
We can see the answer.
Yeah, whenever you want. If you want to see it now, you can see it now. Because
So you can see it here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can discuss that part also.
Yeah. Yogesh, can you please show the results?
Yes, ma'am.
I have to stop the share. I think so. Yogesh?
Yeah, so 100% said that they are interchangeable, the ventilating boogie and the airway exchange catheter.
Yeah, we'll discuss this one. This needs discussion. We'll discuss at the end of the session.
Yeah. Can we have the second question, Yogesh?
Yes, ma'am. Here.
Yeah. So 100% say that leak test should be done in every patient with predicted difficult extubation.
They are right. They are right. At least leak test should be done in all the cases when you predict the difficult extubation. Fine. The first poll we'll discuss at the end of session.
Yeah.
So you need to plan the technique of extubation, how you should do it. So the literature discusses the various methods. The first method, under paralyzed state, extubate the patient, insert the supraglottic airway devices, and continue the ventilation. And this technique to be employed when you want to minimize the hemodynamic fluctuation, and when patient, and then reverse the patient, and when patient is awake, just remove the supraglottic airway. One another technique, it's the same technique. This is required to do when you want to minimize the hemodynamic fluctuation at the time of recovery. But here, under paralyzed state, just pass the supraglottic airway devices behind the endotracheal tube, and once it is in C2, then remove the endotracheal tube and shift the circuit over the supraglottic airway devices. Continue with the ventilation. Reverse the patient when you achieve the optimal respiration, and when patient is fully awake, remove the supraglottic airway devices. The purpose of both the technique is same, to minimize the hemodynamic fluctuation. The third technique is extubating over the airway exchange catheter. Most of the airway exchange catheter, the size or length of the airway exchange catheter is more than the double of the endotracheal tube size. So here is the answer of the first question. Boogie do not have the longer length. Airway exchanger is longer than the boogie. So in case of emergency or for a while, you can use ventilating boogie to extubate the patient, but it's not an ideal condition because it's not having a longer length. That is one thing. And you can't keep the boogie for a longer period of time. While AEC you can keep at least for 2 hours, and reported cases are there for 48 hours, even 72 hours. So AEC is well tolerated compared to boogie. So this is one of the technique of extubating the patient over the airway exchange catheter. So you need to pass the optimal size of airway exchange catheter into the tube up to the midpoint of the larynx, roughly 28 centimeter. Deflect the cuff and remove the AEC, remove the tube over the AEC. And you can oxygenate through the AEC, but don't flow more than 2 liters. The recommended flow through the AEC for oxygen is 1 liter. And do not jet through the AEC, lead to barotrauma. So flow restriction with the AEC is maximum up to 2 liters. Optimal is 1 liter per minute. And when patient is fully awake, you can easily remove the AEC. When you are sure of this patient is able to maintain the airway integrity, then you can remove the AEC. So another technique is hybrid technique. So this technique required when you want to minimize the hemodynamic fluctuation in predicted difficult extubation. Here, airway exchange catheter has to pass to the endotracheal tube up to the mid trachea, up to 27-28 centimeter from the incisor. Remove that endotracheal, and all the important thing, all airway exchange procedure should be done in a paralyzed patient. Then remove the tube, and over the AEC, pass the supraglottic airway devices, continue with the ventilation, reverse the patient, and when patient is fully awake, just remove the supraglottic airway devices. Fully awake and optimal respiration, then remove the supraglottic airway devices and keep the AEC in C2. The patient is able to open the mouth, showing the tongue. You can phonate also. Show is phonating, is speaking his name. So one other technique of extubation is over the flexible endoscope. So this is required when you are suspecting the infraglottic edema or infraglottic collapse, like tracheomalacia in a post-thyroid surgery. So you need to extubate under vision. And if you suspect there is a collapse, you say, look at this is the figure of this is the movie of the tracheomalacia that we have taken in one of our patients. There is significantly decreased anterior posterior depth, collapse of the tracheal wall. So under vision, we were able to identify the tracheal collapse, and we have immediately reintubated the patient through a scope, fiber optic scope only. So once you plan the technique, then you need to prepare. So for preparation, first you need to sensitize the operation theater staff. Ask them not to go out and give them proper job listing. Like this fellow is going to handle the suction. This fellow is going to prepare the emergency airway guard. This fellow is going to prepare the oxygen delivery device. So don't allow them to go outside the OT. Sensitize them. Prepare for intubation. Keep all the difficult airway gauge, difficult airway card ready when you are extubating a patient with the predicted difficult extubation. And ensure optimal patient condition, physiological condition before extubating a patient. And once you prepare everything, then you should go for a extubation. But important thing, under general anesthesia, all the patients are going to develop atelectasis. And this is the in vitro video of it. This dark red color are showing the atelectatic area. So we need to open the atelectasis at the time of recovery. And that can be done by lung recruitment. And recruitment should be done in paralyzed patient. So what you should do when you are suspecting there is a atelectasis, recruit the lung. Recruitment is a technique, it's a procedure, it's a method, it's a process to open atelectatic area. So that can be done by generating 40 centimeter of H2O sustained pressure for 15 seconds, 8 to 15 seconds, and it should be followed by 10 centimeter of H2O PEEP. So once you are planning the extubation, don't reverse the patient. First, recruit the lung with the 40 centimeter of H2O pressure for 8 to 15 seconds. It should be followed by 10 centimeter of H2O PEEP. Then PEEP should be continued, and then reverse the patient, establish the breathing, establish the optimal breathing, and continue with the 10 centimeter of H2O CPAP and extubate over the CPAP, which keep the alveoli open at the time of recovery, at the time of extubation. So this is the lung which has been recruited with the 40 centimeter of H2O pressure for 8 seconds. Look at this. It's completely open lung without any atelectasis. If you want to compare this, look at this lung surface and look at this lung surface. This is atelectatic lung and this is post-recruited lung. So now it's time to perform the extubation. So before you perform the extubation, always discuss the consequences and technique of extubation with the surgical team. Explain them the consequences of extubation and take them into the confidence and then extubate the patient. And in 2016, ADA has given the excellent approach to extubate the patient with the difficult extubation. And there are 3 limbs. Algorithm is an algorithm with the 3 limbs. First limb is for a normal airway. Second is for the patient with 4Ds, as we have discussed what are 4Ds. And third, patient with 3 Ss. So if you look at a normal airway, if you are planning to extubate a normal airway, so you can extubate deeply or when patient is fully awake with hemodynamic attenuation. And with the 4D and 3Ss, these are patients with the predicted difficult extubation. 4Ds and 3S. And if you look at the algorithm, either with 4D, patient with 4D or 3S, the technique is extubate over the AEC, or AEC means airway exchange catheter, or over the fiber optic bronchoscopy. But decision making and approach is different. Suppose you are handling the extubation with the 4Ds. So keep the difficult airway cart ready. Extubate the patient when patient is fully awake and obeying command. And patient lung should be recruited in a paralyzed state before extubation, when you plan the extubation. And you should extubate the patient when fully awake and obeying command. And it should be extubate over the airway exchange catheter or fiber optic scope, bronchoscope. And throughout the process of extubation, supplement the oxygen and consider giving positive airway pressure, CPAP or HFNC after extubation. But when you are handling the cases with 3S, surgical cause of airway compromise or suspected airway edema or suspected airway collapse, the first thing you need to do is you need to decide whether I am able to extubate the patient or not. If you think this patient is not possible to extubate, then directly go for dystomy. Don't make a try for extubation. Make a clear-cut decision. Okay, this is not extubatable patient, then go for a tracheostomy. But if you are planning for extubation, you are planning to give an attempt of extubation, then keep difficult airway cart ready, perform the cuff leak test, and if leak is present, then after recruitment or in recruited lung, extubate the patient over the AEC or FOB in either OT or ICU or SDU. But when leak is absent or equivocal, this suggests there is an airway edema or airway collapse. The only limitation of this test is able to detect the infraglottic collapse, infraglottic narrowing of the airway, not supraglottic. So if leak is absent or equivocal, do not extubate this patient. So do frequent assessment of the patient after 2 hours, 3 hours. And when you feel that this is the time to extubate, then extubate the patient in OR under deeper plane of anesthesia with optimal spontaneous breathing. But when you are making delay in extubating a patient because of leak is absent, always consider giving steroid, consider taking measure to reduce the airway edema before next assessment. And in any case, after extubation, if airway integrity is compromised or airway obstruction persists, then re-intubate and go for a tracheostomy. And do not forget to take a post-procedure plan. Like treat the airway edema in a post-op period if suspected, monitor for any complication, and counsel and document. Thank you. So these are the few slides of where we are conducting a 3 days on-patient training course for fiber optic and videoscoping airway management. And we are also running a fellowship in advanced airway management. It's a 4 to 6 months residential course fellowship. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patwa, sir.
Thank you.
It was pleasure. The thing is that most of us would know most of these things, but we won't remember at the time of extubation. So your enumerating them makes us aware that yes, these are the things we have to keep in mind when extubating. So my take-home message would be that timing with motor recovery and awakening should be in mind. Positioning as per the expertise of the anesthetist. Left lateral with head down, everyone may not be comfortable. So supine with head up positioning can be used for extubation. As you very well said, sir, lung recruitment is a very essential part of it. And cardiorespiratory stimulus to be obtended in whichever way one wants to or one likes doing. A difficult airway pre-op is a difficult airway post-op also. But an easy airway pre-op may or may not be an easy extubatable airway post-operatively. So this is my take-home message from today's discussion, sir. And I would like to thank you and Dr. Vanna Mangal, who has been really highly active in organizing these difficult airway lectures. Over to you, Dr. Vanna. I hope she's still there.
Yes.
Over to
Yes.
Jyoti. Over to Jyoti.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Now Patwa sir will give away the online certificate.
Just a minute. Ask sir if he wants to ask a few questions to the residents.
Yes, sir.
Or resident can ask me the questions if there are any hand up.
Either way.
No questions from resident?
Pooja, Abhishek, Dhanya, Priyanka, anybody?
Can consultant ask a question?
Sure.
No, Dr. Apeksha, what's your view about permissive hypercarbia for extubation? These patients sometimes with this thing, permissive hypercarbia. Do you?
See, important thing, in many cases, specifically in laparoscopy surgery with the increased IAP, we are not able to maintain the ETCO in a normal rate.
Yeah.
Right. In such cases, after optimizing the ventilatory settings, optimizing the ventilatory strategies, still we have to accept a certain limit of increase in EtCO2.
Yeah.
In many, I do a lot of bariatric surgery. That in such case, I have to do same thing. I am accepting the EtCO2 up to 55 for 20, 30, 50 minutes, not more than that. And when I am accepting the hypercapnia, so once they deflect the EtCO2, once they deflect the CO2 from the abdomen, I am not immediately extubating a patient. I'll continue with the ventilation till I get the EtCO2 in the normal value. That is important thing. And second thing, I always go for a blood gas before extubation.
Yeah, that is true.
So if it is normal, then plan for a extubation. Otherwise,
because we at our center we also doing lot of bariatric surgery, and I am very much involved in that. So we also follow the same thing, that the hypercarbia should be taken care. Another point is that the patient of COPD who are living on the high carbia, their strictly drive from the carbon dioxide. In those cases, would you electively or means permissible hypercarbia helpful?
Already they are on the higher side. They are maintaining on the higher EtCO2. So in such case, it's a critical case. If you are conducting a critical case with the COPD, then go for a pre-op ABG and accept that ABG in a post-op period.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Now we can continue with the certificate distribution by Patwa sir. Can we have the certificates online?
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Our first candidate is Dr. Abhishek.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
We have a question actually.
Yes.
What if the patient is not following commands, but breathing adequately and continues to grunt and has slight stutter. In that case, what should we do actually?
See, important thing. If hemodynamic patient is stable hemodynamically, and then there are chances of airway collapse once you extubate that patient. Patient is breathing normally, but not fully alert. You mean to say?
Yes, sir.
So you can not fully alert. So you can wait till patient is fully awake and extubate if hemodynamics is stable. Take a proper measure to control hemodynamics with the pharmacological method, and then extubate. That is another method is a deep extubation. So in a deeper plane of anesthesia, you can extubate that patient, and you need to observe that patient if there is airway collapse.
Finish होने वाला ही है.
Then ideally, when you are extubating a patient in deep, then continue with the CPAP in a post-op period, which keeps the airway integrity. That is important thing. So you need to maintain the airway integrity after extubation if you are doing under deeper plane. But being a PGs, you are starting your career in anesthesia. Don't take such chances. Do a proper pharmacological attenuation of the hemodynamic responses. Keep the patient fully awake and then extubate. So when you are selecting any technique of extubation or any technique of airway management, you need to have optimal exposure to that technique, optimal skill of that technique, and optimal experience of that technique. Then apply that technique. So if you're applying, when you are novice and you're applying this technique for the first time, you tend to compromise the patient's safety. In such case, just do not extubate the patient. Ask your colleague, senior colleague, to be with you when you are extubating a patient. So there is no heroism in airway management.
And so what if the patient is presenting with hysteria? That is, he fakes it out as if he is still inadequately reversed. Then how do we make sure the patient is completely reversed in those situations?
See, if TOF is there, look for TOF. Fine. Another thing, when patient is on ventilator with the good ventilator, check for the expiratory tidal volume.
Okay.
If expiratory tidal volume is good, not good, it's normal, then you can give an attempt of extubation. Otherwise, no. So you already mentioned the criteria of extubation.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you, sir.
Yes, certificates, please. Yeah, Dr. Abhishek.
Abhishek, congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for providing me such an excellent opportunity to learn under all the senior teachers, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am.
But keep applying this technique into a clinical when you are doing the extubation. Don't just forget.
Please, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Dhanya Ganesh Nayak.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, congrats. And you and your team has prepared well.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Pooja Agarwal.
Hi, Pooja, congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Priyanka,
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
congrats.
Yes. Now coming to the last part of the session, vote of thanks. On behalf of Regional Anesthesia Forum, I thank Patwa sir for such an enriching session, sir. I want to thank Parsha sir and all the residents who have participated. I want to thank Swami sir for moderating the session. I want to thank MNC Virtual and all the people who logged in to make it successful. Thank you, sir. And now Dr. Abhinaya from Team SMS has something to tell us.
Abhinaya?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Good to see you again.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I had just one more doubt. If I have to use a non-pharmacological method when the patient is bucking, but I need to keep the endotracheal tube, so what method is at the level of a resident level?
Depend the plane of anesthesia.
That's it. Okay. I had to deepen the plane. Okay. Is there any possibility of any kind of blocks or any kind of local anesthetic use in this?
There is a role of airway block, but it is to be applied at the time of intubation, and it's helpful when surgical duration is less than 30-40 minutes.
Okay. It is not helpful if the surgery duration exceeds, or
with the tube in, you can't spray the you can't give a transcricoid spray. So another thing, what you can do, you can spray the lidocaine spray through the tube, deflate the cup for a while, and when patient is expiring, it is going to pair the paratubal area and cover the tracheal surfaces with the xylocaine, which can minimize. But at the same time, when you are doing this technique, before doing this technique, at least you should suck out all the secretions, surgical debris, and blood if it is there in the oropharyngeal area.
And we just wanted to thank you for making our Mondays more interesting, otherwise the boring Mondays. And we would be really regretful to look forward.
Vanna ma'am is there. Huh? Vanna ma'am is there.
Yes, she's there.
I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Abhinaya. And I want signing off message from Ma'am Vandana ma'am.
Yeah. Apeksha, I was wondering.
Thank you all once again.
Thank
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
Jyoti. Thank you so much. Apeksha, I was wondering if we could instill a little xylocaine intratracheal. Will that help?
Intratracheal xylocaine spray or xylocaine,
No,
that
through
is
the
possible. But
endotracheal tube.
see,
Through the endotracheal tube, if you instill,
you can
maybe
instill, but what happens when you are just instilling the xylocaine through the endotracheal tube is going to anesthetize the surfaces of trachea beyond the tracheal tip, beyond the endotracheal tube tip. So you need to deflate the cup and ask the patient, and then patient has to expire gases through the deflated cup.
Thank you.
When you, well, there are a few evidences of using the intra-cuff xylocaine, which prevents the hemodynamic fluctuations. There are a number of studies with a different technique.
Okay. So it was really a
Sir,
pleasure.
I wanted to ask something. Sir,
Please,
do you
please do.
in your slide, sir, you had told about xylocaine with soda bicarb. So are you using routinely at your setup? And
No, I have not mentioned about the soda bicarb. I think that has been mentioned by the Gania.
So do you recommend it? What I wanted to
No,
ask.
I am not using the bicarb solutions regularly. Not regularly, I am not using it.
Okay.
But if it is an evidence,
Uh-huh.
good evidence, then we can definitely accept that technique, and we can have our own trials before making it applicable to mass.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, Vandana ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you so much. Abhishek. Sorry, Yogesh, can I have the first slide, please? So it's been a nice journey. And what we learn becomes a part of who we are. So I'm sure all that we have learned becomes a part of our daily practice. And the key to success is that we love our subject. And next slide, please. So it has been a very interesting journey with the Apeksh and residents from SMS, Mahatma Gandhi, and Santokba Durlabhji Memorial Hospital, and on all these sessions of optimizing laryngoscopy, cricothyrotomy, and art of extubation. they really are very important skills for every anesthesiologist. They're important skills for everyone, but more so for the anesthesiologist. And on behalf of everyone, very big thank you to Dr. Apeksh for making it all happen and happen so beautifully. Next slide, please. And please look forward to more such interesting, interactive, and enriching sessions. Stay connected on Regional Anesthesia Forum through virtual platforms or in-person meetings. We will have many more to come, such sessions. Keep connected. Stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy yourselves. Thank you all for joining for all these sessions and today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I must appreciate the effort of Dr. Mangal and Regional Anesthesia Forum for doing great job for teaching their PGs. Really an excellent job.
Thank you so much. We wanted the interaction and involvement of postgraduates. We usually don't have it. The webinars turn out very passive. So when I spoke to you and you suggested, so I liked the idea and we picked it up.
And they have to prepare for preparing themselves. They have to read. That is important thing.
Yeah, that is what I wanted them to learn, that they have to read, because these days normally what they do is copy paste. So they don't read the topics. But here they had to read. So they had got a taste of reading. Am I right, Abhinaya?
The fear of sir asking questions still made us read, actually.
Okay, so we will end the session and then we will move on to our Zoom talks. So everyone else can log out.
Thank you. Bye.
Please stay on.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Please stay on. Jyoti, stay back.
Yeah.